time. I'll try to honor the 10 minutes I have, maybe try to go a little bit quicker. Thank you to the organizers for letting me discuss this paper. It challenged me in ways I didn't think I could be challenged. I've been reading it over and over again, and Arun already did a great job presenting it. So I'll quickly summarize my understanding of the paper and go through 4 sets of comments. As you all know by now, the paper is trying to understand how can we measure the impact of intervention timing. So let's just upfront admit this is a very difficult problem for all the reasons that came up, including cohort selection effects, which may be strategic from the firm's perspective, or maybe a cohort was acquired in a high promotion time period, or perhaps at a specific self-motivated time of shopping. So once you can develop a method that can help us understand truly the causal effect of intervention timing, you can see a whole range of applications. So it's a potential method that managers could really pick up and use when deciding when to send an email nudge, when to request customers for a review if they've had a service experience recently, or when to send a promotion if they abandon their cart, as Arun's example shows. It's a very relatable setting. So this is not ChatGPT generated images. These are, a lot of them are my shopping experiences too. So if you forget something in your cart, you may be asked to go back and complete your purchase. Sometimes you may be asked to actually use a discount code, get 10% off for going back and spending more money with the retailer. So it's a relatable setting. And there is a golden standard. So if you were to run a randomized timing experiment, you could get these causal estimates. And the idea is there is a cohort that maybe abandons their shopping cart, and then retailer can see who these people are, and then the retailer can randomize some of them into an early intervention, some of them into a later intervention, and then also be able to then estimate their causal effects. Again, Arun has really good math, so I won't even pretend to talk about the math much, but the intuitive idea is you weight based on the proportion of high type and low type shoppers and take their treatment effects. And so you could get these unbiased effects from this ideal field study with randomized intervention timing. Now the whole premise of the paper is, let's just assume you can't do it for whatever reason. Maybe operational complexity, maybe you're worried about the early intervention people going and telling the late intervention people, hey, this promotion is coming, so don't buy yet. And they're maybe being strategic in some way. So if this design is not possible, which is a big if, then what you can do is still have the promotion go out at one point in time, but you use this idea that people enter cohorts at 2 different timings, maybe multiple different timings. So cohort 1 sort of came early, cohort 2 came on day 8. They both got the promotion on day 10. And so you create this natural sort of variation that some people are treated early, some are treated later based on when they enter the cohort. And here you get a different expression for the causal effect, which, as Arun has humbly acknowledged, will be biased to begin with, particularly under 2 conditions: if the cohorts are not at all similar, or if their treatment effects are different based on high type and low type in a way that's driven by the timing of when they entered the sample. So those 2 conditions are basically saying proportion of low type customers in cohort 1 should be equal to proportion of low type customers in cohort 2, or we should be able to assume this kind of conditional independence that irrespective of the timing of treatment, they should have been, the difference in their treatment effects should have been the same. So that's a non-trivial setting. So to quickly summarize my summary, we're talking about a setting where randomization, which would have given us ideal setting to get these unbiased treatment effects of different timings of intervention, is not possible, but the simplified version gives us biased results unless we can balance these cohorts in a way that their treatment effect is independent of the timing of their entry into the cohort. So how do we get to that? That's where the generalized propensity score matching comes in, which will help resolve some of these lack of balance issues. And I'm not going to go through the empirical application again. Arun did a great job presenting it. I'll reiterate some of the points you all brought up and then discuss my thoughts on the paper. Overall, there's a lot to like. Ambitious problem, difficult to tackle, builds on a lot of literature we already see, and gives us theoretical evidence that this method would work under certain conditions. My 4 comments are going to be first about the motivation, which I think we can make this paper even stronger by really motivating it well. And then again, a lot of the comments are going to be about the method itself, picking up on a lot of the comments that came up in the discussion today. So when it comes to the motivation, which was really hinging on the fact that there should be a scenario where randomizing treatment timing is not possible. And my question is that really a constraint these days? And a lot of times we already see experiments being run where you can randomize treatment timing. If the question is about reducing this high dimensionality problem into low dimensionality by not testing every single possible treatment timing, maybe we could categorize, as Arun does as an empirical application also, 1 to 4 days or 7 to 9 days. So ultimately the method doesn't fully use the high dimensional nature, which is the operational complexity to begin with. And so I think there's a bit of a disconnect that can be resolved. And again, there are some other suggestions I have here. For example, if we're worried about sattva violation, again, the method also assumes sattva to begin with. So a lot of the problems that are set up as motivations, in the end, at least in the empirical application, don't come through. And I think there can be a better connection there. My second set of comments are about benchmarking, which I think, Raphael, your comment was kind of getting to. How should we think about what would have happened in the absence of having this generalized propensity score method? And to authors' credit, they do mention other papers, for example, Imbens 2000, and also Kosake Emai's JASA paper, that have done this sort of multiple cohort matching, just not in a temporal variation setting. And then there are other papers in marketing too, which have looked at multiple treatment groups. Chen et al. Paper in JM looked at multiple cancer outreach treatments, where they did, the early version did have a propensity score matching flavor, and now they also build on causal forest, which again, looking at these different algorithms and the applications that already exist, how would these methods benchmark? And I think that'll just help us as readers understand when to use generalized propensity score relative to some of these other methods. Okay, and obviously Dan McCarthy, I know, gave you some comments already. So him and Shino Blander have a really cool paper. This is a decision sciences paper that I will share with you. And it also says that you know, in staggered design, you could also have really complicated adaptive and non-adaptive type of experiments. So again, maybe these two are not the only possibilities for studying intervention timing. Okay, couple more minutes. So I'm gonna spend some time on the method itself. So if I had only 30 seconds to do my discussion, the main point I would make here is, in the empirical application, we do not have ground truth. We do not have a setting where there is randomization of the intervention timing. So I feel like we're going in a little bit blindly and trusting that matching on these 5 covariates is giving us the true effect of the intervention timing without really knowing what would they have looked like without using these methods. So there is no ground truth in the empirical application, which in the theoretical proof is really important. My second set of comments is, how do we do this matching? And again, the order of cohort matching with replacement, without replacement, what are the variables to use? And I hate to make this comment, but also, should we be worried about unobservables, particularly given the fact that the early cohort that gets the early treatment has a shorter window of time to interact with the retailer relative to the cohort that gets the treatment later, who has a much larger time window to have these unobservable interactions with the retailer, maybe got exposure to social media or other things that may have happened differentially in this time period. And again, I know that is a little bit harder to get to. One of the things they do in the paper that Arun didn't talk about is they do exclude anybody who made a purchase after abandoning the cart, but before buying, before getting the intervention. So you do exclude that to keep the sample as clean as possible. There is some hope. There are some comments at the bottom that are doable. So you could do robustness checks for aggregation to different windows. You could claim up front that, hey, you still need randomization for this method to work. We're not getting some kind of magical estimates here. So there's some things that can be done in the paper. And I was really surprised that the reminders didn't work at all. And I looked back at some of my email marketing messages. There was an email I got on July 29th with no promotion. And July 30th, I had the order on the way. Seems like reminders work for me. Okay. My last set of comments is about exposition, but also the framing of the paper. I think there's 2 papers going on in parallel sometimes, because we start off thinking about this as when should firms send an intervention, but it also becomes a paper about how can we develop a method that researchers and firms can use for broader set of settings where we want to measure the effect of an intervention timing. So I think that in my mind, the method and the theory part is pretty strong. And so I would try to find an empirical application where you do observe the intervention timing changes and build on that more as a way to support the method. So this is probably what I would focus more on. And again, this is coming from a person who doesn't develop new methods. So please take it with a grain of salt. That's it. I have some other comments which Dante Donati is to blame for this. I saw Dante do this at the platform conference, so I thought I'll send that slide to you with all my other comments. Thank you so much again for letting me discuss this.